So my story is really, it's certainly a personal story, but it's kind of the story of how I'm taking advantage of a lot of the things we talk about, the idea of innovation and the idea of how the industry is never static. I think all of us know that, but this story and what I've experienced, it's been both educational and a little bit humbling to see how you can take advantage of technology and really be innovative and do things that you couldn't do 5 or 10 years ago. For those of you that don't know, because I think a lot of people kind of don't know, I mean, certainly market research as a department, we're looking at data and churning out data all the time. I think one of the strengths when I speak outside the organization about what we do and how our data, whether it's consumer or the monthly tracking that we do or forecasting, we tend to have a holistic view of the industry, which I think gives us a strength that we can speak to not only what's happening right now, but it almost necessarily has us looking at past trends, and we've got the 80-year history of data that we've been accumulating over the years with the data program, and then we do our forecasting initiatives. But what that kind of impels us to do is really look at where we are now, but make predictions about, well, what's going to happen down the road. And by having an association with all these members, we're getting direct input from a lot of these manufacturers. So I think we're really well informed in order to say that this is what's going on now, and we can all see that. But what's going to happen in the future? And one of the predictions we made a few years ago was this last decade we kind of refer to in a lot of senses as the digital decade, which is when analog, whether it was on screens, what you're listening to, went from old school analog to digital. And we saw the ascension of digital displays, and TVs own the last decade. And the sales certainly reflected that, and also the culture reflected that. And we made a prediction, I made a prediction as an analyst, that I thought there was going to be a resurgence in audio, if for no other reason, because it had been so dominated by all things display. People were necessarily going to turn back and say, well, now we have all this amazing video quality, but it doesn't sound so great. And coincidentally or not, that was when Beats came out, and suddenly the headphone market, which I think all of us can remember, were largely things that you handed out for free on a plane. Suddenly you're getting headphones that cost hundreds of dollars, and I'm not saying that I or any of us predicted that, but we did have a sense that receivers, that there would be maybe a return to vinyl, a kind of a necessary and very welcome idea to get a more complete experience in the home. And how that pertains to me personally is in addition to following these trends professionally, I've been writing and doing reviews, and I was a grad student, I was an English literature major, so I've seen, my pedigree goes back to, and some of you might laugh at this, typewriters, and remembering writing papers on a typewriter, so couldn't have been more analog. And in the space of about 10 years, the internet came along, and now that whole experience, even for me, has changed from, I'm still old school that I put my notes on a legal pad, but it comes into a computer and, of course, lives there. But I welcomed, as someone that writes about music, writes reviews about music, and has really been invested in the music industry as an industry, seeing the ways that the digital decade really revolutionized the landscape for both artists and audiences. The old days and the publishing model for both music and books was largely unchanged. I'd say in the music industry for most of the 20th century, for books, goes back centuries. The means of creation, production, and distribution was virtually unchanged. But the key word was there were gatekeepers. So in the music industry, of course, to get a physical product, you had to have a company acquire your music, and that was half the battle, because then they would promote it, market it, and own it. But you physically couldn't do it unless you were, maybe with cassettes, the old cliche of selling them out of the trunk of your car. But digital, of course, changed all that. And the only people that have really suffered in this process, the people that are complaining the loudest, are the old gatekeepers. The people that used to get a good chunk out of every unit sold because they own the means of distribution. So when we started seeing musicians able to create their own digital content, put it on their website, and sell it, whether at a concert or sell it from their website, or go directly to Amazon, that was huge. That was the democratization of content, which hadn't existed. And as a music fan, and someone that has written novels and has written, I thought, it's too bad that won't happen in my lifetime. I'd love to see something like that happen in the book world. And I just figured there's no way, how can that possibly equate? Well, then e-readers came along, and with the massive ascension of tablets and smartphones being able to do these things, all of a sudden the proposition changed completely, and it really has mirrored what happened in the music industry, which is to say, you can have a digital file, and if people have the means of reading it, which of course is your phone or your smart pad or your tablet, whatever you have, it takes the gatekeeper out again.